Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Last week, the final episode of The Rings of Power came out. I reviewed the first two episodes earlier, but I did not review any of the episodes since. So today, I'm going to review the season 1 of The Rings of Power. Before I tell you guys what I thought about this season, let me know down in the comments, what did you think of season 1 of The Rings of Power, and what did you think of just the finale itself? Because I'm mainly going to talk about the last few episodes, but I'm also going to talk about what I thought about the earlier episodes. So before I get started, let me know down in the comments, and what is your point of reference? Are you someone that really loves the Lord of the Rings movies, and are you someone that just was really excited for this? Or are you someone that was kind of excited but is not a huge fan of Lord of the Rings? I'd love to know your thoughts. With that said, I'm going to get started talking about it. And like I mentioned in my review of the first two episodes, I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings fan. I don't think all three of the movies are my favorite movies. I think the third one is. I think Return of the King is one of my favorite movies of all time. I really do enjoy the first two movies, but I'm not a fanatic like a lot of other people are. I haven't read any of the books or anything like that. So that's my point of reference. I'm not completely into the Lord of the Rings franchise like a lot of other people are. With that said, though, I was really excited for this, and I watched it, and I think the first two episodes were okay. I did enjoy them for what they were. I didn't think they were too slow, and honestly, from there, I did think, a lot of the show was slow, especially, the first half. The first 4 episodes, really, were just really slow, and I feel like they dragged on, and honestly, I feel like the first 4 or 5 episodes could have just been 3 episodes, and I think the show itself would have been better because of that. Or maybe they should have just shortened the length of each of the episodes. Because I feel like at points, the show just moves way too slowly and it's really annoying. And I feel like the editing is a big reason for that. I feel like they should have edited some stuff out. So that way, maybe each episode is 55 minutes to an hour instead of an hour and 10 minutes. Or maybe it could have been the first 5 episodes could have been 3 or 4 episodes, which I think would have helped the show a lot. I know a lot of people are hating on this show, which I never understood, because from the beginning, I've never hated anything. Sure, there's some things that didn't work. Sure, sometimes it dragged on, but I think as a whole, it worked for what it was. And I know a lot of people have political agendas for some stuff, and a lot of people are they think it doesn't line up with the way the books were and how it fits in with the franchise in general, which I'm okay with. If you're gonna take some creative liberties for something like this, I'm fine with it, which is why I really like some things like the MCU and stuff. It's not exactly like it's in the comics, but they changed things up a little bit, and the show did that. I'm fine with that. And also, I have never read the books, so I don't really know if it did something like that. So I'm not gonna be angry over it. I'm completely fine with the show taking creative liberties, and I think for the most part, what the story they told actually worked. So I don't hate it. I just think that some of the pacing issues are just really obvious in the first few episodes, and I wish they shortened it down a little bit. And honestly, that's my biggest issue with the season as a whole. The first 4 or 5 episodes are just way too slow for me, and they didn't work as well as they could have. And if they shortened it down a little bit, to 4 episodes, or maybe just shortened the episodes down, that would have really helped the pacing, and that would have kept me a lot more interested in those episodes. With that said, though, once you get to episodes 6, 7, and 8, the show is amazing. I think it's those last 3 episodes are just a great stretch of great episodes, because I had a really good time watching all 3 of them, and I watched 7 and 8 back to back once 8 came out. So I was really into what was happening, and I really enjoyed it. Now I'm going to go into spoilers, so if you have not seen the show or the last few episodes, do not watch the rest of this video, because I'm going to go into spoilers. So once you get to episode 6 and the actual battle starts to happen, I think everything starts to pick up pace, and I really did start to enjoy the way it worked. Now I do have some issues, when you were in the village with the people and they were getting stabbed and stuff, it was nighttime, and then you cut to Galadriel and all the Numenor people racing towards them, but it's daytime over there. So I guess it's kind of not done well, because they're trying to show that this happened a while ago, but the way they edited it just didn't work. So it felt like they just kind of showed up out of nowhere. But with that said, I think overall it did work. I did enjoy when they showed up and the actual battle took place, the action was really cool. I really liked the way Galadriel was fighting. I really liked the way everyone else was fighting. And it's just a really cool sequence to watch. And at the end of that episode, when the volcano erupts and then we see Mordor being formed, that is one of the coolest things I've seen in a while. Just a great sequence. And it's a great one to end on because after that, I really wanted to watch episode 7. One of my favorite aspects of this show is the relationship between Durin and Elrond. Like, I really love those two characters, and their friendship is one of the best things of the show. And that's something I've been looking forward to basically every episode. Every time an episode started, I started watching an episode. Watching the two of them together has been something I've really looked forward to. And because we didn't get any of that in episode 6, and it was still awesome, I was really excited for episode 7 because we would finally get back to those two characters. And when they showed up again in episode 7, I really enjoyed that. Throughout the show, they've had like a really interesting dynamic because Elrond wants to heal the elves, and like he wants them to be alive because right now the tree of life, I think that's what it's called. I forgot what it's called, but the tree of life, it's like dying. So the elves can't live for a very long time. So for that reason, he wants Durin to, like, he needs Durin's help to fix that. And that's something that just led to an interesting dynamic because he tried to help out Elrond. Durin tried to help out Elrond, and he ended up just disappointing his father. And that's something that's just, like, it's real. It's like you can see something like that happen, feel the emotions there. And that's one of my favorite parts of this show. Because of their friendship, they're willing to risk things for each other. And it just felt really emotional when that happened. And when you do get to the ending, and they find a different solution for it, it's really satisfying. I will say, Galadriel, she's a character that I really started to like. At the beginning, I thought she just didn't feel like the same character that she was in the Lord of the Rings movies, but I still enjoyed her. But when you get later on into the show, it just, you kind of see where she goes in the future because she's obviously really flawed. There's a lot of character flaws there, and you see that she has to grow as a person. And I think that's something that's just really interesting because seeing her grow into what she was in the Lord of the Rings movies is, I think, something that's just really interesting because throughout the whole show, she's just been really aggressive and arrogant. But I'm interested in seeing how that plays out in future seasons and how she turns into the character that she was then. But I think just seeing the hints of her flaws and just seeing how she's going to grow into that is going to be really interesting. I also just like her character in general, just the way everything plays out with her character, I think is really cool. And when you get to the finale where she's having a conversation with Halbrand, is just really cool. And I just have to admit, the finale is a great episode. That episode is one of my favorite episodes of television I've seen all year. And a lot of people don't seem to be like on my side with that because a lot of people just don't like the show in general. And I think a lot of people didn't even like the finale as much as I did. But I thought the finale was basically perfect. It did everything really well, and I think it led to a really satisfying conclusion. And the way the rings were formed at the end, finally you actually get to see the Rings of Power in the Rings of Power, which I thought was really satisfying. And the twists in that episode were just off the charts. I loved everything. It starts off with just a completely, like, something that left me really confused because we thought the stranger was Sauron, which I think is just really weird because I never expected that. I thought that guy was just someone random that we're not going to be, like, seeing in the future. I thought he was just going to be a character in the show and he's not going to show up again. But he was Sauron. And I thought that was weird because once they reveal it, it did kind of make sense because you see that there's some sort of darkness in him when he kills like a bunch of fireflies earlier in the show. But obviously he ended up not being Sauron, which I thought was great because I thought that was a really nice way to sidetrack and confuse the audience for the actual reveal. And when the actual reveal happens and we actually find out that Halbrand is Sauron, I thought that was really satisfying. That was one of my theories that he was going to be Sauron, but I wasn't 100% sure about it. But when it was revealed and he has a conversation with Galadriel and he tries to convince her to be by his side, I thought that was all just really, really cool. And the whole montage of how they like switch locations, it was all just really cool. I genuinely think it's one of the best villain reveals that has happened over the last few years and maybe ever that I've seen in a movie or show. Obviously, Stranger Things Vecna reveal was really cool. That was probably my favorite villain reveal ever. This doesn't top that, but it's a really good reveal and I really enjoyed it. This show is a prequel to the Lord of the Rings movies, and one of the things that I think prequels should always do is just improve the things that came before. Obviously, they take place after what happened, so they have a way to just make you appreciate what happens more. And I think this show did that. This show made me appreciate what happened in the Lord of the Rings movies more. And right after I finished it, I wanted to go back and rewatch those movies because I felt like I was gonna like them more. Which I don't know for sure if I will, but right now I have more of an appreciation for them because like there's a lot of story in this show that I feel like I learned a lot more about the characters. And when I go back and watch those movies, we're gonna see a lot more of what like I'm gonna understand a lot more of what happened there. There's also a couple of other characters I want to talk about. I really liked the elf that's with the humans. His name was Arendir, I think. I really like that guy. I think he's just really cool in a lot of scenes. He has some really good action. I do think that he could have had a better character arc because throughout the entire show, he's basically just an elf that was trying to help them out. He doesn't really have an actual character or emotion or a personality, really. So I wasn't like in love with him, but I do think he was a cool character, and especially like in the action scenes, he had some really cool moments. I also like Theo in that storyline. Like, he's a kid, and really the way he's like, I don't know, just the way his character plays out and the way he's like really emotional and really aggressive is really interesting to me. And throughout the whole show, I think he was one of the standouts. And because he's a child actor, I think the actor did a great job of playing him. And when you get to the last few episodes, he just has a really interesting way of like showing his emotions. And I think he's one of the standouts of the show for me. And the Harfoots, I have to say, is probably my, like, it's not bad by any means, but it's the storyline that I think was the least interesting. I had fun with it. I think it's definitely like really lighthearted, which made it enjoyable to watch. But I was never in love with the characters because we never really saw anything like story-wise happening with them. Obviously, when the stranger shows up, I think that stuff is interesting, and that's the only reason I kept watching that part of the story, or else I would have just been completely out of tune with it. With that said, though, because you have the stranger that's like somewhat interesting, that's the only reason I kept watching it, because the Harfoot stuff really was just really boring, and I never like really fell in love with the characters. I do think like the relationship with the stranger and Nori was fun because like they just had a really good dynamic with each other and they cared about each other. But I was never like completely on board with the Harfoots like I was a couple of the other storylines, like especially Durin and Elrond and then Galadriel's storyline. I do think they could have done a better job of making it more interesting, which I think is probably the most like boring part of the show for me. With that said, though, I did enjoy like the fun family dynamic that the characters had. I just wish that it was more entertaining than it was just boring because nothing really story-wise happened there. At least not until the last episode. So obviously I have to talk about the reveal at the end, which I know a lot of people were left confused. So was I, honestly. Like when at the ending, I didn't really understand who the stranger was, but then he says a line about like when in doubt, just follow your nose or something, and that line kind of reminded me of something that I heard in the Lord of the Rings movies. And because I've only seen those movies once, I didn't really completely like understand what he was saying. When I went and searched it up, it was apparently he's Gandalf. I guess that's what that was supposed to mean. Which honestly, I like the fact that he was Gandalf because I did not. That was completely unexpected. When it was revealed that he was Sauron, I was confused, and at the end, I was just confused about who he was. And I looked it up. It said he was Gandalf, which honestly, I love the fact that he's Gandalf. Like I think it completely fits. He kind of looks like him, I guess. And I don't know how I didn't piece it together, but I think I really like that reveal. And the way it ended off with the Harfoots, I thought was really good. The goodbye scene, it was very emotional because I did see everything that happened before. And I think it did lead to something that paid off really well because Nori leaves with the stranger, or I guess I'm just going to call him Gandalf now. I really liked that scene, and I just really liked the way that storyline ended, even though for most of the show I wasn't completely on board with it. So yeah, overall for me, The Rings of Power is a show that had a lot of negatives. It's not perfect, but I think overall I did end up enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. The first few episodes are really slow and they're kind of a slog to get through. But once I got into the second half, I really enjoyed the show, and especially the last three episodes they're just absolutely awesome. I really had a good time watching them. It's not perfect, it's not as good as the Lord of the Rings movies, but they're still really good, and I think the show as a whole just really worked for me. And even though I was disappointed by some things, even though some of the storylines weren't super interesting, I still think by the end of it, it paid off really well. And once I got into the finale, it was really awesome, and I really loved what they did with the Sauron reveal. So my final score for this show is going to be a B plus. I really enjoyed it. I would have probably given an A minus if I didn't think about it too much. I was gonna give it an A minus just because I loved the finale so much. I think the finale is just an absolutely awesome. It's one of the best finales I've seen all year for any TV show. But I have to be realistic here, and I have to say that I don't completely love the first half of the show. So that's why I ended up giving it a B plus. Because as good as the last three episodes are, the first half is very slow, and I did not think that it worked as well as it could have. So that's why I'm giving it a B plus, which I think is still a really good rating. I just think it could have been an A minus or an A if the first 4 or 5 episodes were shortened down to 3 episodes or just shorter episodes. So yeah, overall, I enjoyed Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. I really enjoyed the show. Let me know down in the comments, what did you think about this show? If you enjoyed my review, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.